Have you ever walked away from a conversation only to think back on it days later and wonder, was she trying to say something? Maybe it was the way her eyes lingered a little longer than usual, or a question that seemed casual at the time, like, do you listen to music often? Or, how have you been lately? Things you brushed off as politeness, just small talk, but when you piece them together later, they seem to mean more than you thought. And then, like a slow reflex kicking in, you start to wonder, did she like me? Did I miss something? When a woman has feelings for someone, she rarely says it outright. She doesn't confess, and she doesn't make the first move the way men often do. She chooses a different way, quieter, subtler, and sometimes easy to miss. A glance that happens again, showing up at just the right time. A message with no real reason, other than to remind you she's thinking about you. Small details, easy to overlook when you're rushing through life, not really paying attention. This video isn't about tricks or pick-up lines. It won't teach you how to read women like an open book. What you'll get here is something simpler and more important, awareness. Because there are clear signs when a woman truly likes you. You just never learned how to notice them. Sometimes the most obvious things aren't in what's said. They're in what's left unsaid, but still felt, if you're truly present. There are things a woman will never say out loud, even when her feelings have reached a point where they're impossible to ignore. Not because she's weak or lacks courage, but because she understands this. Real feelings don't need to be shouted to carry weight. They only need someone perceptive enough to notice. And if you don't notice, she won't blame you. She'll simply step back, as quietly as she once stepped closer. Women have their own way of expressing affection. Not clear-cut, not flashy. They express it with a glance that lingers just a bit longer, with questions that seem to serve no purpose, other than to feel a connection. With passing by you more often than usual, pretending not to notice. Everything unfolds subtly, easy to miss if you're rushing, but clear enough if you're truly present. Many men lose their chance not because they're unattractive, but because they wait for too much proof. They want confirmation, a direct line, a gesture so obvious it can't be misunderstood. But feelings don't work that way. Feelings are signals, not evidence. And when you try to turn a delicate signal into something definite, you lose it. In love, women need to feel safe. They don't want to put themselves out there unless they know they'll be received. So they send out small signs as a way of testing. Does he care enough to notice? Is he tuned in? If you don't see it, they'll understand that you're not ready. And if you do see it, you don't have to rush. Just be present. Epictetus once said, "We cannot control others, only how we respond to them." So, if a woman is trying to get close, what you need to do isn't to rush in or pull away in fear. It's to listen, not with your ears, but with your full attention. In a world that runs fast, reacts fast, and expects replies in 3 seconds, a man who pauses to observe and feel, that's rare. And that kind of man is who makes a woman feel safe. Not because he speaks well, but because he hears what hasn't been said. You don't need to be perfect to recognize love. You just need to not be too busy to miss the look, meant only for you. Because a woman might not confess, but she always leaves a sign. And if you're truly present, no one will need to explain it to you. You'll just know. And if you're wondering what those signs actually are, then from here on, watch with me. Every little detail a woman leaves behind is telling you more than you think. Sign 1. She looks at you more than usual. There are looks that aren't meant to start a conversation. They don't come because you said something interesting or stood out in a crowd. It's a gaze that lingers longer than normal, but still short enough to leave you unsure whether you just imagined it. A few seconds later, you catch that same look again, and then she turns away, pretending she wasn't looking. It's not random. Women often reveal their feelings through their eyes before they themselves realize what they're feeling. The gaze is the first thing they lose control over, and the last thing they try to hide once they notice those feelings are growing stronger than they expected. She looks at you, then looks away, not out of shyness, but because she doesn't want you to see too clearly, too soon, what she's beginning to feel. And here's what you need to remember. She doesn't have to look at you directly to leave a sign. Sometimes it's when you're talking to someone else. She's sitting a few steps away, and her eyes still find their way to you. Sometimes you're both in a group of friends, and you turn your head just in time to see her eyes shift away from you in a split second. Those looks aren't meant to draw attention. They're her way of quietly asking herself, did he notice? She's not hoping you'll look back and start a conversation. She just wants to know, are you really present? Are you paying attention? Are you different from the men who look but never really see? A man living by Stoic principles doesn't rush to conclusions. He observes that gaze like a soldier reading signals on a battlefield, alert but not reactive. He understands that a look isn't an invitation, but it isn't random either. And if that look happens again, in the same quiet way, from the same distance, it's no longer just a coincidence. Don't immediately look back as if seeking confirmation. Let the gaze come again. When you're not in a hurry, that's when you truly see it for what it is. She's testing whether she can leave a sign without risking herself if you don't notice. Women choose the eyes as their first language because it's the safest place to start a feeling. No words to be rejected, no actions to be misread, just a look to see if you're really seeing her. When a woman feels nothing, she'll instinctively avoid your eyes. That avoidance is also a sign, just in the opposite direction. That's why the gaze isn't only about attraction. It's how you tell the difference between genuine interest and polite interaction. And if you catch that look a second time, understand this: you're standing at the doorway of something real. Sign 2. She texts you first, even when there's nothing important to say. A message arrives when you're not expecting anything. It's not your birthday. There's no special occasion, just a simple line, are you still awake? Or, is it cold where you are today? Light, seemingly meaningless. But sometimes, it's the unclear things that carry the most feeling. A woman doesn't reach out when she feels nothing. She's not scrolling through her contacts to send random small talk. If she texts first, even without a reason, it's not because she's bored. It's because, for a moment, you were on her mind. Just a moment, but enough to make her want to connect. Women always think carefully before sending something, especially to someone they care about. They wonder if it might be misunderstood, if it might be annoying, if you'll find it strange that she's asking what you're up to, and if, after all those hesitations, she still decides to text you. That is the first sign of something real growing inside her. An indifferent man will scroll past it like any other message in his day, but a man who understands will sense something deeper underneath. He doesn't need to write a long reply or use poetic words. He just needs to be there in how he responds, because sometimes presence isn't in how much you say, but in how much attention you give. When a woman sends a message for no particular reason, she's not looking for an answer, she's looking for a feeling, to know that you see her. She doesn't expect you to understand everything right away. She just hopes you won't ignore it. She hopes you'll respond with the kind of care someone deserves when they're beginning to open their heart. Not every connection begins with a date. Many relationships grow from seemingly aimless conversations. But in every word, every small gesture, there's a real feeling trying to find a voice, gentle but true. You don't need to reply with a wall of text. Just respond like someone truly present in the moment, like a man who isn't too busy to notice and not too rushed to miss a moment that might be the start of something more, because maybe you've already received a message like that before, and maybe you read it with the tired indifference of a long day. Maybe, on the other end, she waited for a reply, not to keep the conversation going, but just to know, did you see her? And if you've ever missed that moment, then next time a woman sends you a simple question, pause for a few extra seconds. Don't rush to reply, be present, because sometimes the only thing a woman really needs isn't a clever response, but someone perceptive enough to understand that this moment means something to her. And you'll see, feelings don't always begin with words. Sometimes they start with a glance or a hesitant message, and what comes next might just be a smile meant only for you. Sign 3. She laughs more when she's around you. If messages are her way of gently reaching into your world from afar, then when she's close, her smile is the clearest sign that you make her feel safe. There's a kind of smile that's unlike any polite expression you've seen. Not the forced grin in a meeting, not the awkward chuckle at someone's bad joke. It's the kind of smile that escapes naturally, sometimes for no clear reason at all, and you only see it when she's near you. If you're paying attention, you'll notice the difference. That smile doesn't need a punchline or a special moment. She might laugh when you're just telling an ordinary story, or when you stumble over your words, or simply when you look at her and ask, "What?" and she answers, "Nothing. I'm just happy." That's not a smile because of the story. It's a smile because of the person telling it. Because emotion doesn't always come from content, it comes from connection. In that moment, she feels at ease, unguarded, no need to keep up appearances. And when a woman can laugh freely around a man, that's when she feels the safest. On the other hand, when a woman isn't interested, she still laughs, but in a measured way, just enough to be polite, enough to avoid confusion, but it lacks the carefree spark she shows when she's genuinely happy around someone. A man who's paying attention won't just let that smile pass like a cute little moment. He'll understand. A smile is the first visible sign of someone beginning to open up. And if it keeps happening, again and again, whenever you're together, that's a clear signal. Women don't laugh openly, and often around someone they feel nothing for. They might be courteous, they might be friendly, but real laughter is something they save for the person who makes them feel like they can be fully themselves. Here's something you should remember. Women are often led by emotion more than logic. If, when she's near you, she doesn't have to try, and still feels happy, still laughs easily, then you are the reason. And if you're observant enough, you'll learn to tell the difference between a smile that's just polite and one that's just for you. In a real connection, people rarely remember every word that was said, but they always remember how they felt being around you. She might forget the stories you told, but she'll remember, "When I'm with him, I laugh." And that's what makes someone stay. Not looks, not money, not skills. Maybe you're not the most fascinating man in the room, but if you're the one who makes her laugh in the most natural, unguarded way, then you're already the one she wants to keep in her world. Sign 4. She remembers the things you like. There are things you say only once, things that feel fleeting, forgettable, a story about a movie you loved in high school, a strange little preference, like the smell of fresh wood in a bookstore, or maybe just how you take your coffee, no sugar, a splash of oat milk. You don't bring it up again, you don't think it matters. But then one day she asks, "Did you see the soundtrack from that movie on Spotify?" And you realize she remembered. Women don't remember everything, but they remember what's tied to feeling. They don't try. They don't need to take notes or force themselves to memorize. They remember because they were genuinely paying attention in that moment. It's not intentional, but it runs deep. A man who's paying attention will see this for what it is, not a polite gesture. She doesn't have to remember what kind of films you like or how you take your drink. No one asked her to, but if she still remembers, it means you didn't just pass through her mind. You stayed there. Real care doesn't always show up in direct words. Sometimes it's in the way she orders the exact thing you like on a date, or plays the song you once mentioned, just once. Small things, but subtle enough to show she's listening to you more deeply than most. Women express emotion through recognition. They don't need to make a big deal out of it or prove anything. But if they choose to care about you, they'll remember the things you never thought mattered. And in those details, you'll start to see yourself stepping into a more private emotional space of hers, not loud, but truly meaningful. In a world where people talk more than they listen, having someone remember something you once said, that's a quiet, powerful kind of affection. Not because you're remarkable, but because you touched something in her that made her want to keep you in mind just a little longer than usual. So if you notice she remembers things you only mentioned in passing, don't brush it off. Understand this. It's not just a good memory. It's a clear sign of emotional attention. Women don't always say what they feel, but they leave clues, soft enough not to pressure you, deep enough that you'll feel them if you care. When she remembers something you like, no matter how small, that's her quiet way of asking, "Do you see that I'm thinking of you?" And if it keeps happening, it means she's no longer just listening. She's creating a space for you in her memory, her emotions, and in the things she wants to carry with her for a long time. Sign 5. She dresses up more every time she sees you. You run into her at a friend's gathering, or maybe it's just another regular day at the office. Everything feels the same as usual, but there's something different, subtle, yet enough to catch your attention. Her hair is more neatly done, a pair of earrings you've never seen before catching the light. And there's that faint scent as she walks past, just noticeable enough to make you glance back without quite knowing why. That's not a coincidence. And it's not because she had an important meeting that day. She knew you'd be there, and she prepared for it. Women don't dress up just for fun. They have their reasons. Sometimes those reasons go unspoken, but that doesn't make them any less real. And one of those reasons is this: they want the man they care about to notice the difference. She's not changing her style because you like dresses or jeans, not because you once said you liked her red lipstick. She's trying something new, a way of appearing differently in your eyes, not for show, not to prove anything, but as a quiet way of saying, "I care about how you see me." That kind of preparation isn't just on the surface. It starts in the mind. She spends a little longer in front of the mirror. She thinks about what to wear, not to stand out, but to match the feeling she has when she thinks of you. She doesn't say it. She doesn't ask your opinion, but behavior doesn't lie. If you're paying attention, you'll realize this change isn't just because she likes to look good. Women can be casual around close friends, can be plain when they're alone, but they put in more effort when they're around someone they care about. Not out of fear of being judged, but out of a desire to be noticed. Not like everyone else, but like someone special. Maybe you won't notice it the first time, but if every time you see her, there's something new, not flashy, but just enough to catch your eye, then that's not just a habit. That's a sign of time, thought, and care, not shared with everyone, but saved for someone she wants to connect with. She's not waiting for compliments. She doesn't need you to be amazed. She just hopes you notice that the change is real. And if you see it happening again and again, understand this: You're not only present in her thoughts, you're shaping how she wants to present herself when she's around you. Women don't do this for just anyone, but when they do it for you, it means you matter enough for them to want to look a little more beautiful every time they're near you. Sign 6. She begins to open up emotionally. At first, she keeps a safe distance. The conversations stay on the surface: work, friends, things easy to talk about and far from anything deeply personal. But then, without anyone asking, without pressure or prompting, she starts to share. Not the usual small talk anymore, but pieces of her that she doesn't offer lightly. She tells you about her childhood, about a complicated relationship with her family, about a failure that made her lose faith in herself, or a fear she's never admitted to anyone. You sit there, not interrupting, not rushing to give advice. You just listen, and in that moment, a door quietly opens. You might not even realize it yet. Women don't let people into their emotional world easily, not because they're fragile, but because they've had to be strong for too long. They've learned to keep emotions in check, to protect the most vulnerable parts of themselves. But if one day she chooses to let you see those parts, that's not an accident. It's a clear sign she feels safe with you. Emotional safety doesn't come from smooth words. It comes from how you respond when she shows you the cracks, the parts she usually hides. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to fully understand. You just can't pull away. You just have to stay in the moment most people would quietly back out of. Because when a woman shares with you the things that aren't easy to say, she's not just telling you a story, she's handing you a key to a part of herself very few people are allowed into, the place of memories, of broken trust, and of things she usually tucks away behind a composed smile. To the outside world, she might be strong, accomplished, always in control, but with you, she doesn't need to hold it all together. And if you're paying attention, you won't just listen. You'll feel the weight of what she's trusting you with, the responsibility to protect the fragile truth she's brave enough to show. That's no small thing. Anyone can say the right words, but very few are chosen to see the real side of someone. And if you're the one she lets in, understand this: she's choosing you in the most serious and heartfelt way she knows how. Sign 7. She initiates subtle physical touch. There's a kind of language that doesn't use words. It doesn't pass through the eyes or the voice. It's subtle, quiet, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it like it means nothing. It's in the way she touches you, a light tap on your hand when she laughs, a playful push on your shoulder when teasing you, or the gentle brush of her hand against your back as she passes you in a crowded space. At first glance, it all seems accidental, but if you look closer, you'll realize it's not random. Women don't easily let others into their personal space, and even less so do they initiate physical contact themselves. On a subconscious level, they keep a natural buffer around their body, a quiet distance from people they're not entirely comfortable with. So if she breaks that distance with you, it's not chance. It means that, deep down, she feels at ease, and there's a little affection that's reserved just for you. Some men don't notice this. They assume it's just her being friendly, open with everyone. But in truth, women draw clear lines. They know exactly who they keep at arm's length and who they allow to come a little closer, even if it's just a small, fleeting touch. That kind of physical contact doesn't have to carry the weight of a confession, but it always carries a message. A hand resting on your arm while she talks isn't there to emphasize her point. It's her way of anchoring you in that moment. A tiny physical link backed by real feeling. Women are intuitive. They don't touch without permission, permission they've given themselves emotionally. They don't let people into that space carelessly, and they never do it unconsciously with someone they're not fond of. What you need to do isn't to respond with a similar gesture, but to notice the sign with enough sensitivity. Don't assign meaning too quickly or react too strongly. That touch isn't an invitation, but it is a quiet message. I feel comfortable near you, and I don't mind letting you a little closer. The distance between two people isn't always measured in feet. Sometimes it's measured in feeling. If she's letting you in through these seemingly casual touches, then maybe, within her, that invisible barrier is no longer standing between you. And when a woman begins to let you into her physical space, the next thing she often does is let you into her emotional space, not with direct words or personal disclosures, but by sending you a song, a movie, or a video, something that feels like you, or something she hopes you'll feel with her. Sign 8. When she sends you a song, it's not random. When a woman sends you a song, you might think, oh, she just liked it and wanted to share. But the truth is, women rarely send something emotionally charged unless something inside them is quietly shifting. That song isn't just about the melody or the lyrics. It's a piece of feeling, something she listened to, thought of you, and quietly wondered, will he understand this feeling? She doesn't need you to analyze the lyrics. She doesn't expect an instant reply. What she's hoping for is something much simpler, that you feel what she felt, even just a little. It's the same when she sends a movie or a video. It's not about starting a conversation. It's her way of bringing you closer to her inner world without having to say anything directly. Because sometimes, some things are hard to put into words. But when two people watch, listen, or experience the same thing, the emotional distance between them starts to close on its own. Women don't usually say things like, "This song is exactly how I feel," or "I see myself in this character." That's not their language. Instead, they send you a hint, quiet, subtle, but full of intention. And if you're paying attention, you'll see, behind every seemingly small gesture, is a connection slowly being built. You might be the only one she wants to share that with, because when a woman finds a true emotion in a piece of music, and you are the first person she wants to think about while feeling it, you're no longer just someone in her orbit. You're part of how she's starting to experience the world. A man who understands doesn't rush to respond. He doesn't critique whether the song fits his taste. He simply listens, with an open mind, to hear what she's saying without saying it. In love, people don't always speak directly. Some women never say, "I like you," but they've sent you a song, and in it, every lyric is a quiet confession. If you receive something like that, don't just save it to a playlist. Save it in your memory as a sign that's personal, quiet, and real. Sign 9. She talks about you to her friends. You weren't there, but somehow you've already appeared in her stories. Maybe it was when you happened to join her somewhere, and her friend greeted you like she already knew who you were. Maybe it was when she casually told you, "My friend said you remind her of this character she loves from a movie." You laugh, find it amusing, and move on. But if you're paying attention, you'll realize that's not just a passing comment. It's an important sign. A woman doesn't bring up a man in conversation with her friends unless he means something to her, especially not with close friends, the people who hear what's real, unfiltered. When she starts including you in her conversations, she's moving you one step forward, from someone on the outside to someone becoming part of her world. She doesn't mention just anyone, and people who pass briefly through her life don't get mentioned at all, Not in the intimate circle, not in the conversations with those she trusts most. But if you come up, even in small, random stories, that means you're starting to occupy space in her thoughts and in the personal world she rarely shares. Friends are an extension of someone's inner life. When she talks about you, she's placing you in a meaningful spot, possibly even imagining something more. And by doing so, she's also feeling out how well you might fit in her world. She's not expecting you to impress her friends, but she's paying attention. She's noticing their reactions. She's wondering, could you really become part of her life? This kind of sharing isn't loud or showy, but it's clear. It means you're no longer standing outside. If her friends already know your name, have heard about you, or seem curious about you even before meeting, then you've already taken up more space in her mind than you might think. And the most telling part is this: women only talk about the people they're thinking about more than usual. You don't need to ask her how she feels. Just pay attention to where you stand in her stories when you're not around. Sign 10. She doesn't say she likes you, but you'll feel it. Not everything truly needs to be said. Some emotions, once spoken, lose their depth. And women, more than anyone, understand that clearly. She won't say, "I like you." She won't send a long message, won't text you at midnight to confess her feelings, but you will feel it if you are truly present. Not by guessing, not by hoping, but through real attentiveness. She'll stay quiet while you speak, but her eyes won't leave you. She won't find reasons to pull you closer, but she'll never push you away. Her presence beside you, quiet, without demands, is the clearest sign you'll sense, if you're observant enough. Women love in ways far more subtle than men usually think. They don't need to confess. They don't need to define anything. They only need you to be there. In small moments they create, not to test you, but to let you see something silently growing inside them. If you're close to a woman and feel a sense of peace every time she's around, if each conversation makes you want to keep talking, even when there's nothing special to say, then maybe you're in the middle of a very real feeling, one that doesn't need any verbal confirmation. She'll let you sense it, in the silence at the right moment, in the way she asks how your day was, then says nothing more, in the glance she gives you, then quietly turns away before you can catch it. She doesn't chase after you, but she doesn't walk away either. Some connections don't come from words, they come from frequency, from an invisible resonance between two people who happen to be in the same space, at the same time, without needing to name it. The man in a hurry will search for certainty, but the man who is truly present will feel what's happening, even if nothing is ever said. And if you're sensitive enough to recognize the meaning behind the silence, if you're deep enough to understand that not saying doesn't mean not feeling, then maybe you're standing in front of a kind of love that would only get more complicated if spoken. Don't wait for her to say it. Don't ask her to define it. Just feel it, through your presence, through stillness, by looking at her and knowing you're being chosen in the quietest yet clearest way possible. Maybe, somewhere along the way, you missed a glance, a random question sent your way with no clear reason, a gentle gesture of care that you took as mere politeness, and then it all passed before you had time to realize it was a sign. But that doesn't mean you were wrong. Everyone has been unaware. We've all been too caught up in the big things and forgotten that real emotion often shows up through the smallest details, subtle, soft, never forced. Because when a woman likes you, she won't say it out loud, but she'll leave behind quiet signals, clear enough for someone who's truly listening, faint enough to protect both of you if the timing isn't right. And she always hopes that you'll be sensitive enough to notice. You don't need to be good at guessing. You just need to truly be there in the moment, because sometimes the deepest connections begin with something no one ever names. If you've ever missed someone like that, leave a comment. Next time, I won't miss it. And if what you just heard feels familiar, it's very possible she's still there, waiting for you to realize. If this video made you reflect on yourself or on something that once happened in your life, tap like as a way of remembering. And if you feel this message is worth spreading, share it with someone who might need it. And if you want to keep understanding more about emotion, psychology, and the unspoken signs in a woman's world, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss the next video. Sometimes, one moment of clarity is all it takes not to lose what matters most.